extremely healthy. Staff is doing a good job. Of course, the appreciation of housing in the Antelope Valley is also helping us as well. So it gives us some opportunities to do things to, keep the taxes down, the property taxes down, and now we have to just work a little bit on the water rate, and I think we'll be in good shape for 2022.
Yeah, Frank, that's probably, just what you mentioned, that's probably a significant portion of it. The house values went up tremendously.
If there are no more questions or discussion, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Rob Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you very much. Very good presentation tonight.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. That was a good report. Item 7, Personnel Legal JPI Committee. Director Paris, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. Good evening, everyone. The Personnel Legal Committee had a very lively meeting the other day, and we have 3 items to discuss with you. First one is 7B1, consideration possible action on approval of resolution number R2117 to vacate 2 agricultural easements on Avek's West Feeder Pipeline, and I believe Justin's going to do the report on this.
Yes, Director Paris, thank you very much. Good evening, President Dias and members of the board. Got a brief presentation on this item for you today. This is focusing to start to get everyone oriented on what we're talking about here. We're looking at the community of Roseman here on your screen. We've got, sorry, hang on a second. Moving on me. But to the north, you can see, here I got that. Our Roseman.
Can somebody mute that dog?
Working on it. All right, maybe we're good. So we're looking at the community of Roseman. As I mentioned, to the north right here, we have our Roseman Water Treatment Plant. You can see the 14 freeway as it cuts through Roseman. And we have a couple Avec facilities here. In the light blue is our SNP pipeline as it runs to the Roseman Water Treatment Plant. In the purple, running along Astoria here and then turning north, is our West Feeder pipeline that brings raw water to our Roseman Water Treatment Plant. The area that we're discussing is shown in the red box here, and I will be zooming in on that, I think. There we go. So that's zooming in on, you can see this lot of empty parcel, or this empty parcel here. The red indicates the boundary of a development known as Frontier Communities. This is a development that will eventually be served by Roseman Community Services District. They're seeking to build 125 single-family residences on this lot. Again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the light blue here is our SNP pipeline, and the purple is our West Feeder. So it runs adjacent to the parcels here, but not on the parcels. But we do have some existing easements in these general locations here. These are kind of approximate locations and not to scale. But those are easements that were granted in 1987 and 1989 for agricultural purposes on that property coming off of our West Feeder pipeline to supply raw water to irrigate. So as I mentioned, the development Frontier Communities under the FH2 LLC business name is seeking to implement the development of a project called Asher Ranch 5, consisting of 125 single-family residences in Roseman along 35th Street West, and that's between Roseman Boulevard and Orange Street. During design for their project, the developer discovered that Avec has 2 easements, one granted in 1987, one granted in 1989. providing for agricultural water to those properties. But those easements have not been in use for at least 20 years now. That property is obviously no longer being farmed, and you can see the development was growing up around it. And so with the development of homes on those parcels, there's no longer a need for those turnouts, either for the developer or for Avec. We have no plans to using those easements. And so the developer requested that Avec abandon those two easements to allow their development to be moved forward. So staff consulted with Jim Markman on the proper way to abandon those easements. And Jim drafted resolution R2117 to accomplish that request. And that easement or that resolution is in your board packet. So with that, no need for AVAC's purposes, no need for the developer. The Personnel, Legal, and JPIA committee and staff would recommend the board adopt resolution R-21-17 to vacate those easements and authorize staff to file that with the county clerk.
Justin, would you mind commenting on the removal of the turnouts and who's going to be responsible for that?
Yeah, absolutely. There is some existing infrastructure there, obviously, that was used when that property was being farmed. And the developer is responsible for removing that infrastructure and taking that lateral pipe all the way back to our main line and blind flanging it there under the street. So we're very clear that they're not to leave any infrastructure underneath their development, nor in the sidewalk adjacent to 35th Street West.
And Avec will need to inspect that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Avec will look at that. We'll make sure that gets done properly.
So, a question. So basically, this relinquishing and abandoning this easement, there will not be any cost to Avec to remove any of the established piping and turnouts that are there.
Yes, that's correct.
Would it be feasible to have that improvements removed before the easement was given to make sure it was done to Avec standards? In the blind flange was what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, have the work done first and then abandon the easement. Yeah. That's what you're saying.
But otherwise we have nothing, no enforcement.
Yeah, the Kern County building won't allow their development to move forward before these easements are vacated. So we spoke with the developers, staff, and they're going to put a note in their general contractor documents that state that those existing facilities have to be abandoned and taken back to the main line.
Why is that, Kern County?
I'm not sure. That's the process that they're going through. They want to see these easements abandoned before they give them. I don't know if they need their building permit or construction permits or what they need.
I see no reason not to do that, but I think we need to make sure that's done to proper standards. I've seen it before not done to the proper standards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
This general manager, Chisholm, and Justin, did they include this in the conditions of approval for the track map, or that's part of it?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll need to check on that.
Okay, yeah, we can make sure.
I got a question. This is Director Donato.
Sure.
Do you have an estimate what it would cost to remove the facilities?
No, that's kind of hard to say. I mean, you obviously would need somebody to go in and excavate. The property there is obviously empty, so digging up the dirt lot probably is not a big deal, but they'll have to go into the street, dig up the asphalt to get back to the main line, and then repair that asphalt to county standards. But yeah, I'm not sure what that would cost in the tens of thousands, probably. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I think we should get. That's a good for me, a good estimate. But I think we should hold $50,000 in good faith money, in case they get in the middle of this thing, and God forbid, the market changes and they just walk away from it. It could be, we might need that money to finish what they started.
Yeah, we need some leverage, and if we don't do something like a deposit or if it's done first, we have no leverage. And I've seen just what we're talking about where somebody didn't do it properly and it caused a lot of problems.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can certainly go back to them and ask for some of these conditions. Dwayne, what do you think?
Yeah, well, there's what they can do is they can provide a cash bond that would provide to the agency for the cost of the removal, and should it not occur. The other thing to do is to make sure it's part of the conditions of approval of the track map that the county is approving, so that that becomes one of the conditions that the developer has to do in order to be able to get his building permits and also to get his final.
There's more people that know more about the bonds than I do, but my experience is they're very hard to collect on. I'm not sure if that's what we'd want to do.
Well, that's why I was suggesting a cash bond, so that we would have that cash bond on deposit here at the agency for the cost. And
okay, we have a cash bond. Maybe I'm not following it, but is that cash or is that a bond?
That's cash.
Okay,
that's
okay.
dollars.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely do that. What would the appropriate action tonight be, Dwayne, to table this or approve it with conditions?
We can approve it with that condition that we acquire a cash bond for the removal of the facilities to Avek's program.
That's a good point. Very good point. That's what happened with Ritter when they left last time. The city called the bond, and they had forced to put in that 4-lane road.
Right.
On Lake Elizabeth Road. So I think it's a good idea.
Mr. President.
I'm sorry, Rob.
Go ahead, Audrey.
I just have a question. Would it be appropriate to have that language in this resolution that we will require the cash bond?
Yes, and that's this Dwayne again, and yes, the resolution would reflect the additional condition that the board is applying to the release of the easements.
Would it be appropriate to also ask for oversight of the work that's being done by Avec personnel? Yes,
the Avec personnel would oversee the work and assure that the blind flanges are constructed properly before it's backfilled.
Who's paying for their time?
That's something we were planning to do anyway. So.
And Dwayne, this is Rob. Do you feel that $50,000 is sufficient to protect us in case there of a problem?
Yes, that's more than adequate. It may be a little bit much given the size of the lines, but we can certainly get an engineer's estimate and utilize that in determining the bond amount.
And also, this Rob, Jim, is it appropriate for us to do a motion to approve the resolution with the added conditions of $50,000 cash bond, that the removal is part of the conditions of approval from Kern County, and that there will be oversight by AVAC staff to ensure the completion of the project?
Yes, you can. The record reflect we have the language that the resolution will take effect when those things are done. That's the way to do it. So the effectiveness of the resolution will be conditioned on all of those other things occurring. So the abandonment will actually go into effect when they've removed that properly.
So how would you recommend we make the motion?
I say you should. The motion should be to conditionally approve the resolution, so that the abandonment reflected and it goes into effect when the physical facilities have been properly removed to the satisfaction of Avec staff.
And with the conditions we just discussed?
Including the condition that when they go about removing it, they post a bond for the estimated cost of removal with Avec.
Yeah, I've got a question, I guess, to the attorney. I was thinking it was a cash deposit. In
Yes.
the bond, in my experience, you go through a company and you pay a certain percentage of it to get a bond, but that's not, cash. And I think Avec wants $50,000 deposit. And
it's 50 or 50,000 or the amount estimated for the cost of removal, but that means giving cash to Avec to hold, guaranteeing that will be accomplished. Cash.
Well, why
not putting it in, not giving us a letter of credit at some other bank or a bond. No third party in between.
Well, why are we calling it a bond versus a deposit?
We're not. Well, it's a cash bond. It's a cash deposit.
I've never heard of a cash bond for the water agency. I've heard of a deposit.
Okay, well,
the bond may have different ramifications.
That's accurate. Calling it a deposit is accurate. Calling it a bond means it's just guaranteeing that particular work is done.
It's usually done from an outside entity.
This is Frank. I have another question for our attorney, Jim. Jim, so we own the easement, correct?
You have easements, 2 easements, yes.
Well, we own. I mean, yeah. So, Frontier starts working on the project, and lo and behold, the backhoe cuts off the guy's leg on top of our easement. Don't we need some kind of bonding or some kind of insurance, naming us as an additional insurer?
I mean, the question is how basically we could abandon this, and we don't have any further obligation because they haven't asked us to remove all this before they abandon it. So the farther you guys walk into this and start you're almost getting in the position of taking the city's place, because this is the city's obligation is to have them do this before they get building permits and start grading around these areas.
Well, you brought up a good point. So basically, it's almost like a construction loan, breaking priority. Is that the question I have is, until it's abandoned and we sign off, they can't start construction. Because if they start construction before we sign off on the easement, we could be named as an additional lawsuit if somebody gets hurt.
I don't like having a property interest out there either, Frank, while this work goes on. But I also have a hard time saying there's any practical exposure to Avec unless we go out there and we start taking charge of the supervision and act like the city would act, or the city's public works department would act in supervising the removal or inspecting it.
That's
so I don't want to go there. I don't think you want to go. You don't want to go there. You don't want to have any physical control.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about before they start construction of disassembling whatever they're going to do on our easement, shouldn't it be abandoned first? Relinquish all our rights and everything to them before they start doing their other thing they're going to do?
Okay, that would protect you. If you just said we're going to abandon the easement now, good luck, you would be protected because we would not have a property interest out there.
That's what I'm asking.
But George was concerned we would inherit a problem, but somebody would inherit a problem, and we would want it removed correctly. And so that's where the rest of this conversation came from. And I think we can, if you want to have Avec have the capability of going in there with their cash to finish the job, if they go bankrupt or something, because you don't want to leave that undone, that's what we're talking about, adding. If you wanted to, again, that's, for me, is it the county, this is in county area, whatever the land use entitlement agency is, and they're going to require these guys to do this and making sure that's a condition of approval, which was what was being recommended by Dwayne, I think is a very good idea. They shouldn't be able to do grading and finish this job unless they finish this, taking these materials out of there in the first place. So it's a question of which way you guys want to be. If you want to be sure it's done right, then you can insert yourself in there, but don't go so far as to supervise the physical activities, because that could give you exposure. Put it right back on you. That's what I'm saying. So it's a gray area. If you want to just abandon it, you will have escaped any liability exposure, but you won't have a hold on it to guarantee it's done right. So that's the dilemma.
But Jim, wouldn't if we were able to abandon the easement, that would satisfy our liability issue? But
yes.
With the cash deposit on hand, that would assure us that if for some reason they don't do the construction correctly, that the Avec can get that construction work done and kind of have the best of both worlds.
That's true, but one would hope the county they bonded for all the public improvements, including this removal, so that right. if they disappear, the county could finish it. But if you want to be in there too, guaranteeing the work's done right, I have no objection to taking that cash and sitting on it until they've done this right. So, but I think that's right. I think in second thought, it's better not to hold the abandonment up, because that means we have a property interest. They're out on that property while they're working. And that's probably not a good idea. Although, again, it'd be extremely remote that anything of just having the easement could cause a third-party liability issue. So it's just you're kind of taking some of the function that the county should be engaged in and taking it on yourself to be sure they do that right.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I will try, Mr. President. I move approval of Resolution 2117 to vacate the 2 agriculture easements on Avek's West feeder pipeline with the condition that the developer deposits $50,000 with Avec to ensure compliance of the work done, and also that we request either the city of Roseman or the county of Kern to make part of the condition of approval the removal of the turnouts and all the work necessary to complete the project.
That's good.
Do we have a second?
This is Director Miller. I'll second that. With just Rosemond is unincorporated, so it's not really a city. That's my only preface.
Yeah. Then I would change that to Kern County. Thank you.
Any more discussion or questions? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Rob Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you. What's next, Rob?
Mr. President, the next item is 7B2, consideration and possible action on approval of job description and salary range for our senior engineer. And Justin will provide the presentation on this item.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes. Thank you again, Director Paris. I'll jump right into it. We've got a lengthy agenda tonight, but so we're looking at position of senior engineer, obviously within the engineering department. Just thought I'd give a kind of a high-level overview of some of the tasks the engineering department is currently responsible for. You can see a list of bullets on your screen there, but having to do with managing our IT consultants, troubleshooting, equipment procurements and replacements on the IT side, managing of our water accounting and billing software, easement and new connection requests like the easement abandonment request we just talked about, management of our GIS software, including the field applications, requests for infrastructure details from third parties who are constructing projects, within the agency boundaries. Maintaining water level data for water master compliance, management of consultants for engineering and design projects. 3 recent ones are listed there. Management of consultants for high desert water bank and various planning projects. Like you'll see tonight, we have a brief presentation on our local hazard mitigation plan. So a whole host of things the engineering department handles. And that department currently consists of 2 folks, the engineering manager, myself, and our engineering technician, Ben Melendez. Previously, last July, I think it was, staff made a presentation to the board on a need for an additional staff member within the engineering department, and the board recognized a need for that additional support and approved a position entitled Field Project Engineer and funded that position for the current fiscal year. As we went through and reviewed and revised the job specification for that position and looked at kind of the needs of the engineering department in a little bit more detail in light of some projects that we've recently completed, it was determined that a position with some more technical engineering skills and experience in civil design would be more suitable for the agency currently and where we're going in the future. The ideal candidate for this position would be a registered professional engineer in the state of California, and as such would be able to completely design some agency projects in-house. So they would be able to stamp and sign their own designed plans for purposes of agency projects. I'd like to note that what we're talking about tonight, this position of senior engineer, would replace the field project engineer position that was approved when we looked at the organizational chart last July. So this would be a new position, but replacing the field project engineer. This person would take the lead on the majority of small and medium-sized engineering projects. They report directly to the engineering manager and also have oversight over the engineering technician. This position would be able to assist with things like construction management, as well as engineering services during construction on projects which are designed in-house. So it would be a very valuable position to add to our repertoire as an agency as we continue to work on these capital projects. And as we looked at other agencies, job descriptions, and organizational charts to look for the appropriate title for a position with these qualifications, it was identified that other agencies which have similar qualified folks on staff entitle that position as senior engineer. 2 local agencies that we looked at, Palmdale Water District and Santa Clarita Valley Water Agency, both have positions of senior engineer. You can see their salary ranges listed there, roughly between $130,000 and $160,000 per year. The proposed salary range for this particular position at Avec would be right in that range, range 56, which is equivalent to just about the same as either of those 2 agencies there, $126,000 to $160,000, almost $161,000 per year. And so we wanted to look at the cost-benefit analysis of adding this position for the agency. We looked at a couple of projects that were completed just here within the last 12 to 18 months, just on the design of this. So some of these projects included some third-party services for surveying and things, and that would still be necessary even if this person was tackling these projects in-house. But just the straight design costs that this person would have been able to perform had we had them in staff total up to $286,390 for the 3 projects that you see listed there. And those are feasible projects that we could have performed in-house had we had a registered professional engineer that could focus on these projects. So just kind of get an idea of the type of cost savings that we may have by not hiring these projects out to our consultants. And then just to touch again on where we're at budget-wise for this particular position, the current fiscal year budget, as I mentioned, for the approved position of field project engineer was budgeted at the beginning of the fiscal year for a full 12 months of salary and benefits. And that was at range 34 You can see what that range looks like there, 73 to 93,000. So this position, even though they would be at a higher range, justified by their additional responsibilities and certification requirements, would need funding for only 6 months out of the year, being that we're here in October now. And if this goes through, we would, be advertising and hopefully selecting someone at the beginning of next year. And we would need budget for that person for 6 months of the fiscal year. So even with that salary at a higher range, there is a total net reduction to the personnel budget for the current fiscal year of $29,465. So that just kind of get into the fiscal impacts of this particular person, but I think it was the goal of the board to grow our engineering department, to be able to be a little bit more capable of doing some of these projects in-house, and adding this person would certainly get us moving in that direction and provide some additional support within the department to tackle the many projects that we listed at the beginning of this particular presentation. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but the recommendation from the Personnel, Legal, and JPIA Committee, as well as staff, would be to recommend the board approve the senior engineer job description and salary range, which, as I mentioned previously, would replace the currently approved field project engineer.
Yeah, I like what you're saying as far as the senior engineer. If is actually, we can save dollars right there, but if we continue to hire our same consultants, we've added the cost of our water to $4 to $6 an acre foot approximately. If we don't have a cost savings, in years and years ago, I've heard pretty much the same presentation, and we really didn't do what we should have done. We still used as many consultants as we'd ever had done. But in the first description, that was redundant, but already being done. It made us take a little load off of people. But as far as managed consultants, I'm glad you've made that change to the senior engineer. But please make sure we're not hiring as many consultants after as we did before, right there. So I would support that, but there needs to be accountability, and you kind of need to. The staff needs to let us know that, gee, if it wasn't for this person, we'd be going out for a consultant.
Yeah,
because I've heard that pretty much the same discussion that didn't happen in the past. We ended up, for one reason or another, hiring consultants because there's something technical we couldn't do here. We had to go outside. So but we need accountability on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Understood.
Are there any other questions of Justin? Mr. President, are you ready for a motion?
Yes, please.
Also, Mr. President.
Thank you.
This is Frank. I'll second it.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion or questions?
Good presentation.
Good presentation, yes. Pam, could you please ask for a roll call vote?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Rob Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. President, for our final item from the Personnel, Legal, and JPIA Committee is item 7B3, consideration possible action on approval of realignment of agency organizational chart. And Matt will provide this presentation.
Thank you, Director Paris. Good evening, directors. It's Matt. So on page 117 of your board packet is a brief staff report. And attached to that staff report is the proposed organizational structure that we're both staff and the committee are recommending the board approve this evening. So just a little background before I show you the proposed change on the org chart. We're calling this a realignment on the org chart. So I wanted to emphasize that there's no change in personnel, adding personnel or personnel changes or related salary ranges for those personnel. A couple of the goals of making this change will reduce the number of direct reports to myself as the assistant GM. And you'll see on the org chart, there's quite a few direct reports, and we're trying to consolidate individuals within departments that have like skill set and duties for the agency. So we're proposing that as the major change. And this is a snapshot of the org chart that was approved as part of our fiscal year 2021-22 operating budget. And you can see, I know it's small, but on the far left, you can see the office manager, HR. And then just next to that, you can see water resources manager. So right now that's if you want to call it a department, but staff of one, Mr. Barnes, and Tom Barnes does a great job with managing the water agency's water resources. And you can see the change that the board just approved on the previous item is we're going to add another individual to the engineering department as field project engineer. So this is the proposed change here on this slide. You can see the highlighted department, which is the engineering department. So we're simply moving the water resource manager under the engineering manager. As I mentioned, a lot of the duties and skill set the water resource manager has aligns with that of other individuals in the engineering department. And it'll be nice to have Mr. Barnes within that department where he has support staff from the newly approved senior engineer position and the engineering technician. And that's a two-way support, support to him and vice versa. And as I mentioned, the water resource manager title would remain the same as well as the salary range. And it's simply a reporting structure to the engineering manager. So this, as I mentioned, this was presented to the personnel committee, and the committee as well as staff is recommending the board approve this new organizational structure as presented. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This is Director Sorsable. I'll move to approve the new organizational chart.
This is Director Miller. I'll second that.
Do we have any more questions or discussion? If not, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Rob Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sorsable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes.
Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Excellent report and good support from staff as well.
Outstanding support from staff. Thank you.
Outstanding. Item 7C, High Desert Water Bank and Water Bank Resources. Director Donato, do you have a report?
Yes. We met on this, the committee, and we have a possible action on approval of a resolution R-21-18, Amendment 1 to 2017 Mitigated Negative Declaration for the High Desert Water Bank. And our manager, Livesey, is going to go ahead and address the board with the updates on the CEQA report.
Great. Thank you, Director Donato. I will make one correction. I normally wouldn't do this, but in this case, it's actually pretty important. This is an addendum to the 2017 Mitigated Negative Declaration and not an amendment. And you'll, a few slides into this presentation, you'll see why I wanted to make that correction for you. It's pretty significant. So quick background for some of the board members that may have not been on this board at this time, but for the High Desert Water Bank, we did do a CEQA initial study for the project, and that resulted in what's known as a mitigated negative declaration. And so that just indicates that we have some mitigation measures that we have to do to reduce the environmental impacts of our project to a level that's less than significant. That initial study was circulated June to July in 2017 for public comment. And the board adopted the final initial study mitigated negative deck in December of 2017. Apologize for this font. Looks like it turned out a little bit small, but during final design of the project, some changes were identified that would ultimately improve the project. I've highlighted a few of those here. In the board packet, I believe there was a link included at the bottom of the staff report, which would direct you to this document. It's several hundred pages long, so we didn't include it, the full thing within the board packet, but hope you had time to click on that and review it. So some of these are included in more detail, but there was a change from 2 turnouts with a total capacity of 200 CFS to 1 turnout for a 250 CFS capacity. There was a relocation of the habitat management land from some lower elevation areas to some floodway areas. There was addition of recovery wells and a reduction in the total acreage of recharge basins, as well as a shift from using agricultural style kind of push-up berms to a combination of the low, soft push-up berms, as well as flood protected basins. We've got some maps here that can sort of highlight those changes as well. This map came from the 2017 CEQA document, and you can see in green here, it's highlighted the area that we had identified at that time as what's known as habitat management land or conservation land, and that total amount was 322 acres. You can see the location. I mean, it's difficult to see, but there was a turnout located here as well as a rehab turnout down here, and you can maybe pick out some of the pipelines on here. But in the 2021 design, you can see there's been a shift. That's kind of probably the most impactful change that you can see on these 2 maps as I toggle back and forth. But a relocation of the habitat management land from this lower elevation area, which could be served by gravity feed from the recharge basins, to kind of this center area, which is a floodway, which is why it was identified here. But after the team had done some modeling, they decided that area should be a little bit wider for protection from a 100-year storm. So it's kind of highlight. We also have 1 turnout. That new one's going to be located here to recharge the sites. You can see just based on the 2 graphics that quite a bit of work has been done in the design of the project that was unknown at the time the 2017 document was adopted by the board. So to incorporate these changes, the High Desert Water Bank Committee, Board, and Legal Counsel, as well as our CEQA consultants, felt that it would be prudent to modify the CEQA administrative record for the project to incorporate these changes. And the CEQA guidelines allow for these modifications under 2 potential pathways. And this is where I mentioned the difference between addendum and amendment is significant. Us as the lead agency, we have the choice of doing 1 administrative addendum or an amendment, also known as a subsequent document. The difference here is kind of highlighted in bold, but an addendum is used when the modifications to the project have no greater impacts than what were previously identified in the original CEQA document. And it also would require no additional mitigation measures. An amendment would have been necessary had the changes we made to the project had greater impacts than were previously identified or would impact any of the mitigation measures which we had previously agreed to do and would no longer be feasible due to the changes. So there's a kind of high-level difference. And for an addendum, what you do is prepare a thorough document for the agency administrative record that documents the changes, the analysis of the changes versus the original impacts in the original project. An addendum, if appropriate, does not require additional recirculation for public comment. It does require a certification by the board, and our legal counsel, Jim Markman, as well as his counterparts, expert in CEQA, Nick Borelli, recommend filing that board certification with the county clerk and state, which effectively reduces the statute of limitations on any legal challenges that may come. So we moved forward under our CEQA consultants to prepare an analysis of the project to determine which of these two pathways would be appropriate. And Julie Gilbert, she's on the line tonight with Compass Consulting, led this effort. Her team conducted a detailed analysis on subject areas where mitigation was less than significant for the original project. And you can see those topics highlighted there. And they also evaluated some of the other areas which didn't require any mitigation to begin with. But the project changes did not impact those areas, and so no further analysis was necessary. CEQA guidelines also changed in 2019, so they incorporated those two new sections that were added, which are energy and wildlife. So they did a thorough analysis of each of those things, and they were essentially checking these 4 questions that are kind of highlighted here. They prepared a checklist. They looked at the conclusion of the 2017 document, and they asked for every category, do the proposed changes to the project involve new or more severe impacts? Are there new circumstances involving new or more severe impacts? Is there new information requiring additional analysis verification? And is the previously identified mitigation measures feasible, or is additional mitigation needed? So they did this in a very thorough document. As I mentioned, it's a few hundred pages that you have a link to. There's a discussion section which summarizes the differences and evaluation and discussion on the appropriateness of the 2017 mitigation measures as applicable to the 2021 project design. And then a conclusion statement for each category regarding the appropriateness of an administrative addendum. And they did find that for every single one of these categories, the addendum would be the appropriate route for the agency to pursue. And so this is an excerpt out of that document, but kind of their ultimate finding is after reviewing the 2017 initial study impacts and mitigation measures and the 2021 project revisions against the CEQA guideline criteria, it was determined that an addendum is the appropriate document for these project changes. You can see I've highlighted, I'll just read through the finding here, the final finding of the document, which states that the 2021 revised project design remains within the impacts previously identified and disclosed in the 2017 MND, and none of the conditions in the CEQA guidelines section exist requiring an amendment. Therefore, an addendum to the 2017 MND is the appropriate environmental document for the 2021 revised project design, and no further analysis is required under CEQA before undertaking the proposed project. So the next steps would be to, in order to append this addendum to the administrative record of the 2017 initial study, the board should do 2 things: approve and adopt addendum number 1 via the resolution included within your board packet. And as I mentioned previously, file a notice of determination with the state clearinghouse stating that we've done that. And so the recommendation from the High Desert Water Bank Committee, Avec staff, Avec legal counsel, as well as our CEQA consultants, would be to recommend that the board approve resolution R-21-18 for addendum 1, the 2017 mitigated negative declaration for the High Desert Water Bank project, and authorize staff to file that notice of determination. I know that was a lot of information. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
This is Frank Director Donato, I'll go ahead and move on 7C1 that we approve resolution R21-18.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it. This is Shelley.
Thank you. Any more discussion or questions?
I'm making Kindle and I'll pick.
Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Rob Harris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sorsable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you very much, Justin. That was a great report.
Thank you.
Item 7D. Item 7D, Capital Improvement Committee. Again, Director Donato, do you have a report?
Yes, we met the other day, and there's another possible action on approving amendment number 2 with Kennedy Jinks for engineering service during the construction of east side. It's not east side. What is ESDC?
That's the acronym for engineering services during construction.
Okay. Related to Roseman Water Treatment Plant, blending vault, budget's $46,290. Again, go ahead, Justin.
All right, thank you, Director Donato. Hopefully you aren't all sick of listening to me talk yet tonight, but this is my last presentation, so bear with me, please. Move on my slides here. On September 14th, the board awarded a construction contract to W.M. Lyles for construction of the Roseman Water Treatment Plant SNP blending vault. So just as a refresher, the location of that blending vault is here, just to the northeast of our existing Clearwell Reservoir. And what that would do would allow us to blend water coming from our SNP pipeline with treated surface water from the treatment plant and allow that blending ratio to be controlled within this blending vault, which we currently cannot do. So with that already being awarded, we have a contractor on board. Avec will need support from our design engineer to review and approve material submittals, shop drawings, respond to any design clarifications or requests for information from the contractor. This responsibility should be performed by the engineer of record, in this case, Kennedy Jinks, who designed the plans and developed the specifications. And so in this way, by putting that responsibility on them, they fully own the design and any issues that may arise. I'm sure there won't be any, but it's a risk management decision for us. Kennedy Jinks did provide us with a proposal for these services in the amount of $46,290, which staff and the Capital Improvement Committee find to be reasonable and appropriate for this project. And it's a pretty brief presentation on this one, but with that, the Capital Improvement Committee and staff would recommend that the board authorize the general manager to execute amendment number 2 to Kennedy Jinks' current design contract to include the engineering services during construction in the not to exceed amount of $46,290. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, this is Director Nato. I'll move on Board Order 7D1 to approve the amendment number 2.
Thank you.
This is Director Miller. I'll second.
Thank you. If there are no additional questions or discussion.
I do have a comment.
Yes,
comment. Yeah, so I noticed that you said it's to help connect the SNP line. So don't you think we need the other half?
So, Director Donato, this is the existing SNP pipeline that goes to the north. It comes from our west side water bank As you might remember, I wish I had a better map, but as that pipeline comes out from our west side water bank, it splits and goes north and south. The south pipeline terminates at 80th and H. And I think you're referring to SNP Phase 2, which would connect that 80th and H turnout to the Quartz Water Treatment Plant going in the southerly direction. This pipeline shown on the map is the part of it that goes to the north, and that goes to our Roseman Water Treatment Plant. This is an existing pipeline that you can see here on the map, and it goes into this building that's shown here. This is our SNP North pump station, and from there it's pumped out to our central feeder pipeline and goes to communities in Mojave, California City, Edwards Air Force Base, and out there. So yeah, this pipeline is already existing and in place.
Any more comments or discussion? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Rob Harris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Good report, Director Donato. Now we move along to item 7E1, public hearing regarding Avek's local hazard mitigation plan. And here I might need Mr. Markman's assistance. Can you please remind me, do we need board action to open the hearing, or can I simply declare that the hearing is open?
You can do it yourself, Keith.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, the hearing is now open, and I'd like to ask for a presentation by staff and consultants.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, directors. This is Matt. So in your board packet on one page 137 is a staff report for this item. And on the phone tonight, we have Russ Patterson, who is the consultant from R.E. Patterson and Associates. And just as a way of background, earlier this year in January, the board awarded a contract to R.E. Patterson and Associates to prepare what's called the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan for the agency. So local hazard mitigation plans are developed based on a process established by FEMA, who must also approve the plan. So Russ has put together a presentation that he is going to go through this evening. And this tonight, we're not asking for any action taken by the board. We're simply holding what we're calling as the public hearing number 1 as part of the process. There will be a second public hearing, and Russ will go through the entire process of seeking input from this board, seeking input from our customers and the public, as well as holding the second public hearing. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Russ, and we'll start going through the presentation. Russ, we can control the slides on our end if you'd like.
Great. Thank you very much, Justin. Good evening, board members. Appreciate being online here tonight. As Justin noted, go ahead, Justin. Next slide. There we go. You folks approved me putting together a local hazard mitigation plan. I've been working with the district for a few years now, working on your risk assessment and also the emergency operation plan. So between those things, we were able to put together a fairly comprehensive local hazard mitigation plan. Basically, what this does is you look at all the issues that could possibly face the district, and you're putting together a plan basically to fix it before it breaks. Something you're all probably familiar with, anybody who owns a home in the state of California. So what we're doing is we're looking at some of the issues that the district faces for risks, and then we're putting together some of the actions. Go ahead, Justin. The process, again, started earlier this year. We began to look at equalizing some of the resources we had, looking at the current risk assessment that was performed. looking at adding some new ones that we didn't discuss in the past and that other one required by AWAI 2018. We've developed a draft plan that I believe you already have hopefully had a chance to take a look at. And then the next steps, we're going to be implementing the plan. And again, it's a 5-year plan, and it's something staff will be prepared to go ahead and work on over the next 5 years. Go ahead. Part of the planning process, again, was putting together the Technical Advisory Committee called the TACT. We've had a couple of meetings thus far, and then getting a lot of input from staff. We also put together a public advisory committee made up of folks from the outside community members, other water districts, cities, etc., to give us some ideas. We had a public meeting with them, and they gave us some input on the plan before you folks got a chance to see it. So again, we had that meeting on April 29th. We'll be meeting with them after this meeting to get more further input from them when it goes out to the public. Again, the tax staff, again, involved in the operation part, engineering folks, etc. Go ahead. Again, the roll-up pack, as I said, we get input from the public. One of the things that FEMA likes to see is a lot of input from the public. Just a quick background on these. Is there a question? Hearing none. A lot of the input from these is from the public. Again, these were put together from the flooding that has gone on in the Midwest. If you can remember back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, there was ongoing flooding going on in the Mississippi and on a lot of the rivers where there's been substantial damage. FEMA went in and fixed some of the problems, and the flooding would occur again, and they would have to fix again some of the issues that came up. So FEMA came out and said, what we're going to do is we're going to try to come up with some monies and have agencies come together a plan so we don't have to try to fix things over and over again. So again, one of the things FEMA wants to hear a lot of input from the public involved. So that's kind of the role of the PAC, and there'll be some other related issues as well, putting it out to the public. Go ahead. Again, we brought in some representatives, as I said, from the local governments, the cities, and some of the other, and your customers, regulatory from the state, emergency management folks from Los Angeles County and from Kern County, and as I said earlier, from your customers. On page 6, if you do have the local hazard mitigation plan in front of you on a computer, you will see the list of participants. Go ahead. A little timeline. Again, we had the meeting with the PAC on the 29th of April. On the 26th, we're having our first public hearing with you folks tonight. So the folks from the public who are listening in on the meeting could give us an input on the plan. The PAC will be reviewing or anticipating sometime in November. We're having another public meeting, Zoom meeting, to get information from our PAC folks. At that same time, the plan will be going out on the website, and we'll be making some public contacts, and we'll be sending out to other agencies within the Antelope Valley for getting input from folks. I anticipate January, February coming back to you for the second public hearing, again required by FEMA, and you guys approving the plan. And at that time, it's going to be sent on to Cal OES up in Sacramento, and when Cal OES reviews it, they will then send it on to FEMA Region 9 in Oakland for final approval, and at that time, it comes back to you to be approved by resolution. Go ahead. Again, what is hazard mitigation? As I said earlier in my presentation, it's just basically fixing things before they break, lessening the impact of disasters, as we said earlier, that's occurred around the country. Recently, we've had some of the hurricanes and other issues on the East Coast and also in New Orleans again. A good example of mitigation that was done was in New Orleans, if you can remember, by Superstorm Sandy and the other Katrina, where they had the gates and some of the other issues. It didn't happen this time. So clearly, mitigation actions do work. Go ahead. Why did we do it? Again, it's a requirement. Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 that came about by the federal government. FEMA said if you want to get pre-disaster mitigation monies, you must do this. Many agencies throughout the country, the state of California as well, have these. What that does, it makes it eligible for you to get some funding for mitigation things. As I mentioned at the meeting with the planning committee, I'm also an elected official in the fire district here up in Scotts Valley, California, where I live in Northern California. And we are looking at fixing the fire station we have due to some seismic issues. So again, being on the elected official side, these are very, very important to us to be able to get some of these pre-disaster mitigation monies to be able to fix things. Go ahead. Again, local government role, again, we develop these partnerships with other agencies and the public to try to fix issues, as we talked about, taking some of these reduction measures. And again, part of it, the National Flood Protection Insurance Program, doesn't affect you folks, but it does affect a lot of the cities and other local governments in the area. Go ahead. State government role, again, they're the middleman. They're the ones who would assist with the monies. They also get federal monies coming in to deal with issues. Example here I have on the slide is DWR works with some subsidence testing. Issues are going on the California aqueduct. So they are actually doing flood-related and water delivery measures as well from the state side. Go ahead. Again, the federal role, they get the monies to us, goes through the states, the tribes, which are right now a very important part of emergency management after September 11th. They help assist some of the risks, and then they want to review the plans, and they want to spend their money wisely. So these things are really pushed by the feds quite a bit. Go ahead. Again, one of the goals is identifying the threats and the hazards. A lot of those, as I said, came about of the assessment that we did last year. And we used some of the information from that required assessment, and then we added a couple of items that are faced by the jurisdiction. So we looked at everything that's available out there, and we came up with our threat and hazard list that is in the plan. I'll discuss that a little bit. Understanding what those risks are. There may be risks that are not an issue too much to the district, and there are, to the agency, and there are some that are out there, but again, it's really not that significant. And again, the part we want to do is then avoid some of those risks over long-term vulnerabilities. Is where can we put our money to fix them before, basically, as I said earlier, it breaks. Go ahead. So again, they're broken down by natural hazards, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Technological, again, mostly related to hazmat, accidental, and then human caused, which lately have been related to terrorism and other accidental issues. Go ahead. Again, we're really understanding risk is the potential for unwanted outcomes associated with those. So as I said, that's the big issue that we look at. Go ahead. So what we did, working with the TAC and then presenting some of these issues to the Public Advisory Committee, we came out with the main issues that the district faces related to drought, which obviously we are going through right now. Earthquakes, hazardous materials, landslides and mud flow issues, severe storms and localized flooding. Where I am in Northern California, very apparent for the last 2 days. Subsidence issues within the valley, water resource, and that basically is the delivery of waters from the California aqueduct. Wildland fires, which have occurred here in the west area of Antelope Valley in a couple of years, and obviously windstorms, which do affect the valley. Go ahead. So what we did was we looked at all 39 facilities identified by the TAC, with the plants, the agency facilities, tanks, reservoirs, distribution lines, and the intakes, and we looked at of all of those issues, those hazards we have, how are each of these facilities going to be impacted by them? And leading up to that, we put together some charts, and we looked at all these different issues, and then we came up with the information that is located in the plan. Go ahead. The important part about this, you working with the LHMP, is the feds like to see that how this works with all the other plans. So what we've done, we've kind of crafted it so that it works with your draft master plan. Clearly, the capital improvement project plan that you have is very important, as Justin was just talking about on your last presentation. Your board strategic plan. Actually, we took some of your board strategic plans and put those as some of the basis for our own local hazard mitigation plans. So we wanted to tie it together. We also looked at the Antelope Valley Integrated Regional Water and then your emergency response plan. So what we wanted to do is just take all these plans that you have and then tie fixing any potential problems into what you're already doing. Go ahead. On page 91 to 98, if you have your plan up, is listed the mitigation actions that the TAC has put together. These are based on each of the specific hazard risks that we are looking at. So they're related to, again, floods and fires and water issues and all that. So what we've done, we've taken all those things, we've figured out how can we fix some of these problems. And again, that's the big issue for this whole plan. Go ahead. So that's really about it. Again, part of the process is any public input that we would be receiving tonight. If we don't have any, or we hear some public input, then if you have folks that had a chance to take a look at it, we will take some of those comments and we will put those into the plan before we put that out to the general public. So that will end my presentation, and I will turn it back over to Justin, and I am available here for any questions. Go ahead, Justin.
All right, this is Matt.
Thanks,
thank you, Russ. So, Mr. President, I think now is the time that we would open it up for public comment.
Yes, thank you. Are there any comments or statements by the public? If so, please identify yourself for the record. If there are no comments from the public, I'll move along and ask for comments from our board of directors. Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further comments, I will declare this public hearing closed. And Matt, I take it there are no board actions required tonight?
That's correct. So this basically satisfies the checking the box of holding the public hearing number 1 of the process. So,
and there will be future public hearings, correct?
Correct. There'll be one more public hearing before adoption of the plan by the board.
Okay. The public and the board will have another opportunity in the future. Okay, we'll move along now to item 7F, Water Master Committee. Chairman Paris, do you have a report?
Good evening, Mr. President again. The Water Master Committee report will be given by Matt.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris. Good evening again, board. So in your board packet on page 139 is the Water Master agenda for the Water Master board meeting that's scheduled tomorrow at 10 a.m. And so if you don't mind, I'll just go through a few items that will be discussed tomorrow with Water Master.
Just a reminder that not meet right there, at least the ones with when I was aware of. I'm supposedly on that committee.
Okay, yes, that's correct. So tomorrow we're going to have a brief presentation on the long-term imported water supply availability. That's something the Water Master Board has requested. And this is just a real brief, high-level, few slide presentation by myself and Peter Thompson with Palmdale Water District. Just explain to the Water Master Board and the public on how long-term water supply is planned for. And it's all based on the long-term reliability factor established by the Department of Water Resources. And this is important for the Water Master because, of course, they have concerns over long-term commitments of new production that relies on imported water to satisfy replacement water assessments for that new production. So it's more of an educational presentation to talk about long-term water supply availability. We are also going to discuss an amendment with Todd Groundwater. As you know, they've served as the Water Master engineer from day one for the Water Master. And we are presenting amendment number 6 that will cover their budget and scope for years 2022 through 2024. So it's a 3-year amendment to their contract, and it's roughly $220,000 per year for their services as the water master engineer. We're also going to discuss the administrative budget for calendar year 2022 and setting the administrative assessments, holding that at $5 per acre foot for calendar year 2022. There are also a number of new production applications, replacement well applications, and various transfers between parties. Under the administrator's report, I'm going to inform the board that Avec board is interested in transitioning away from the administrative role for the water master, and that we are looking at proposals and options to make that happen over the next several months. That has been briefed and explained to both the advisory committee that met last week and the administrative committee made up of directors Riki and Urosic from the Water Master Board. So everybody's being informed of what our plan is for the long term, and they're well aware of it, and I'm just going to report that as well to the full board. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have on that's coming up for tomorrow's agenda.
Any question for Matt?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Item 8, General Manager's Report. Dwayne?
Yes, thank you, Board President Dias, members of the board. This is General Manager's Report for October 26, 2021. We had a funny thing happened in the last couple of days. We've had a atmospheric river that came over Northern California and dumped 11.7 inches of rain for months, and it would really help alleviate some of the drought conditions that we find ourselves in at the present time. And so we're anticipating it's going to be dry for a little bit, and then there's some anticipation that there might be some additional rainfall later next week. This usually rain events come. It's interesting. They seem to come in 2-week, 3-week cycles, and right now we would be in one of those wetter cycles. So there it is. This is the line with 11.7 inches of. Let me move this thing over here. This is average, 2.8 inches, and we got 11.7. So a very nice October. You can see in one day we got as much rain as more rain than we would get in October and November on an annual basis, and you can see it's also greater than even our average wet months. So very good start to the year. As you can see, our reservoirs really haven't responded to any of the additional rainfall that you have. What's really nice about that rainfall is it has helped to saturate some of the the soil and the conditions, so that additional runoff is likely to be runoff as opposed to absorbed. Once again, you can see this is, there's a couple of days here. You can see this little peak right here. This is in response to those storms, and we anticipate over the next several days you'll get some additional response to that. Currently, we've got about 881,000 acre feet of storage, about 25% of our total capacity, about 41% of our historical average. San Luis, once again, current storage is down to 194,000 acre feet. only 9% of our capacity. This is the blue line here. This is average. So you can see we're in pretty low conditions. One interesting aspect of the early rainfall is that some of the windows for moving water across the delta to avoid some of the restrictions that we have for the fisheries doesn't really take effect to early next year. So we do have a little bit of a window here for being able to pump additional flows across the delta. So hopefully we'll see an improvement here in the San Luis Reservoir conditions because of this storm. Closer to home here, you can see our current flows at Quartz Hills about 6 to 8 million gallons a day. A real significant decrease from what it was a couple of weeks ago. And a lot of that has to do with the wet weather. The minute wet weather comes around, you can see it really comes down. So you can see we're running current flows about 9.8 million. Last 7-day average was 12.3, so it's reducing. You look at our the flow that we're getting out of the west side water bank and east side water bank. You can see that's also relatively much smaller than it has been in the past through our warmer months. As far as water banking, you can see we're not doing any water banking other than placing water in the east side water bank, which is removed almost at the same time. As far as our water quality goes, we've completed all our performance testing for our crediting methods, and the results are forthcoming. Our raw water temperatures are decreasing, and that really enhances our ability to treat the water. It improves the finished water quality, and we're currently meeting all of our current standards. As far as the operation maintenance goes, we're currently operating about 40% of our recovery capacity. William Lyles is getting ready to do the repair work that's necessary on the north feeder, and in January of January of next year. And then our winter treatment plant projects are currently being scheduled. We also have, as part of the solar aspect, part of the project that's occurring out on the Old Bench Ranch site, they had to disconnect our power for a short period of time, and they provided us with portable generators so we can operate each of those. Also wanted to mention to you that the much talked about state funding for drought-related projects has come through. And this is if you remember, this is the $200 million that we have here that's available for some of these projects. And the state water contractors put through a request for some of this money, and it's time to begin the process. We sent this letter for comments back earlier this month, and where we talked about the criteria, the final requirements for the application, grant application funds for this money have come out hopefully in the next few days or two or so. And then what we'd like to do is refer this this funding source to our new projects funding source and grants committee for further follow-up, so that we can prepare what we believe will be a very competitive grant for our SNP Phase 2 project. And looking at the preliminary criteria, we seem to fall into that very, very nicely. And we have a meeting with DWR tomorrow to discuss our project eligibility, and we'll be able to brief the committee on that potential funding source for SNP Phase 2. Also, as outlined previously, I told you that I thought there was going to be some news come from the governor's office and on the emergency and the extending the drought emergency, and it came on the 19th of this month, and all of these counties were added to the emergency drought requirements, and then they also want to. He's urging all Californians to step up their water conservation efforts, and it's also enables the State Water Resource Control Board to ban wasteful water practices. And this primarily has to do with some practices with regards to irrigation that occur up in the Delta area. So that's that. We have no new cases of COVID-19 to report. Our events and schedules, we have a Watermaster meeting on tomorrow at 10 a.m. We also have the WRA conference in Chandler, Arizona, later next month, early next month. And then we have the AB State Water Contractors Board on the 11th of November. Also, we have a special meeting for the water rates hearing on 11/30 of 2021. And our Aqua Fall Conference is scheduled for 11:30 to 12/2. Let's see. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a couple of projects that Director Donato brought to our attention. The first one is called what they called an Advanced Compression Air Energy Storage project. It's 500 megawatt capacity, and these projects have to do with providing electrical storage of water or of electricity that is produced through the solar operations. You know, from a state point of view, we have an excess or a lot of solar power during the afternoon periods, and we have a shortage of that solar power during the evenings when demand is high, but the sun is not out. So they're looking to try and invest in these types of projects that will provide that electrical generation during those periods when solar cannot provide that electric generation. So one of the proposed projects is located near the Roseman area, and it's called this Advanced Compressed Air Storage Program. I've never heard of it before. It's fairly new, and basically what it does is it goes through a process, and I'll by the way, the name of the company is HydroStorage. It was founded in 2010, and it's based in Toronto, Canada. They filed an application with FERC in order to be able to get a license very, very early in the process, but this is what they're trying to do. So basically how the technology works is they use air is compressed using electricity. So they use this solar power that's available during the afternoon periods when we have a glut of solar, and they're able to use a compressor to compress this. This produces a heated compressed air. They use what they call a thermal store. Not sure exactly what that is, but they use a thermal store to extract the heat from the air, and that is housed and for use later. And then so that's essentially what they do. Then the compressed air is then stored in a cavern, and they don't. Not sure exactly what that cavern is. But the inference is that it's they use the groundwater basin in order to be able to put air into the groundwater basin, and the hydrostatic hydrostatic from the pressure from the water that is displaced ends up providing some some pressure that can be released when it's necessary. And then when this compressed air is then converted to electricity, they let it out in the evening and they reintroduce the heat and it, along with the compressed air, to turn turbines that will generate electricity during this period in the evening when power is necessary. Some of the benefits to this program, of course, is that there's no natural gas, so you got the zero emission, which is very important to California. There's no toxic materials, contaminants, or other aspects. They say it's far more cost effective than batteries, on a large scale, and this helps to meet the SB 100 100% clean energy requirement by 2045, I should say. And so that's the reason why they're looking at these kinds of technologies to look into this. And what they use is a closed loop reservoir to be able to generate the heat and the structure, and they can use recycled water as the water source or some other water source. There's a lot more that needs to be investigated with regards to this kind of proposal, but I did want to present to you kind of a high level of what this project's all about and how it might be used. I think it's prudent that we take a look a little further into the project to see exactly what impact, if any, it might have on our groundwater basin. And also we may want to inform the water master because it may have an effect on how, like you say, on our groundwater basin. The water master may have some discussions with regards to that. Obviously, I'm not an expert in this types of technology. I just know what I've read from the FERC presentation that's available. And so I'll be happy to try and answer any questions if you have any with regards to this particular technology. I think it's something we should look into a little bit further and possibly make some comments on if we should see that we have some impacts to the agency.
That's interesting. You mentioned Roseman and caverns. I was thinking originally, I thought they may be talking about some of the mine shafts.
It could, like you say, it's very cryptic what the thing says. I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about here. So
very interesting.
Yeah. So there also I also placed in your packet. There's also a FERC proposal that has come out about reservoirs and using a loop system where you have a reservoir at a higher elevation and you have a reservoir at a lower elevation, and you essentially pump water up to the upper reservoir in the afternoon when there's prices of energy are lower, and you release it in the evening when the price of energy is higher, and you get this delta effect. But more importantly, what it does is provide a more consistent energy flow. And there's a couple of those. There's one project. It's got 3 different locations. Most of them are outside the Avec service area, but I wanted to make you aware that those types of reservoir projects are something that is being proposed by a couple of these private companies in order to help California solve their storage problem, electrical storage problem that they have during the off-peak hour. During the peak hours.
The trouble is, it's a quite a good idea, but if everybody does it, there won't be an excess of electricity.
Yes, exactly.
But at the Edison proposal by past Fresno, they do that. They pump from one lake to the next.
Yeah, exactly, and then they pump it back, and so
they pump it, let it fall down the pin stalks.
Right,
generates electricity.
Yep. So that concludes my report. Unless anyone has any further questions.
Any other questions for our general manager? Okay, thank you very much, Dwayne. Item 9, director's reports. Do any of our board members have reports? Hearing none, we'll move along to item 10, attorney's report. Jim?
Not tonight, Keith. No report.
Okay, thank you. Item 11, are there any requests for future agenda items? If none, we'll move along to item 12. Mr. Chisholm, do we have a reason to go into closed session tonight?
We do. We have item A and item C.
Item C as in Charlie?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to go into closed session for items 12A and 12C?
This is Director Miller. So moved.
Thank you.
This is Director Sarsabal, second.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call vote, please, Pam?
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Division 5, Rob Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yes.
Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. We will go into closed session as soon as Pam can make that transition.
Just so we can get that. Probably get that one.
The board is now back in open session. Mr. Markman, would you please make a report as to what happened in closed session?
Yes, I will, Keith. So on item 3 in the closed session, in reference to that item 3, the board approved an LOI, letter of intent, for Avec to acquire that property on the terms and conditions contained in the draft of the LOI, letter of intent, that was presented this evening. Tomorrow, by I would say noon, there will be a copy of that letter of intent available for public review. The vote was unanimous for those who participated. Board member Van Dam was not in the session at the time the vote was taken. Board member Paris did not participate at all in the closed session discussion or vote. So that's my report.
Thank you very much. Now, if there's no further board action tonight, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
This is Director Miller. I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Gary Van Dam, not present. Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here. Yes.
Division 5, Rob Paris.
Yes.
Division 4, George Lane. Not present. Division 1, Shelley Sourceable.
Yes.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Yes.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. We will now be adjourned. Thank you all very much for participating.
Thank you. Good job, Keith.
Thank you. Good night.